battles there, Billy in, a goal, Chris Billy, Huddersfield Town. The most famous goal of Chris Billy's life. Is this the moment for Lee Fowler? It is. Take your place in Division 2, Huddersfield Town.
Thank you.
And Steve Simonson's boots now. He's missed. Steve Simonson clears the frame of the goal and collapses in a heap of tears. Huddersfield Town are promoted. Skipper Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance.
Fantastic. Okay, it's a new season, it's a new look, the warm-up, but it's still the same old Brady Frost and Tom Bradshaw previewing Huddersfield Town games for you. It's the Plymouth preview episode. Tom, we are back. Clearly, I can't say Plymouth and preview together. How are you doing?
I am not bad, mate. How are you?
I'm good, yeah. Feeling a bit rusty, as I said to you. So I'm sure we'll get into the swing of it. But we are joined by a professional broadcaster here. We are joined by Louis Reynolds, who is, of course, some fans will know his voice because he's a broadcast journalist at BBC Radio Leeds and West Yorkshire Sport. Louis, how are you doing?
I'm good, Brady. I'm glad you're not the only one who thinks you're rusty, because come Saturday at 2:00, I think I will be as well. It's always the case on the first day of the season. So thank you for the nice introduction. And I'm really good. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
No, thanks for coming on. It's your debut here on And He Takes That Chance. So you, to get in all the cliches, you getting any, debut nerves, pre-match nerves?
A little bit, yeah. It's more, I'm glad I'm returning the favour because you've come on BBC Radio Leeds, I mean, all of you, at various times. So it's nice to be able to return the favour. Pre-match nerves, maybe more excitement, because I think if you had asked me before this week, are you ready for the football season to come back? I normally say I could do with a couple of extra weekends off. But I think now we've got into it this week from yesterday, and we've just done a town look ahead as well with Oggy and Matt. I'm really ready. We've just got to get that drive out of the way on Friday.
Yeah, don't envy you with that. And look, ever the professional, plug in your stuff. That's what we like to see. So yeah, Louis, not to rub it in, but I did a little bit of Google Maps in, and it's a 315-mile journey for the Terriers to Plymouth home park this Saturday. Funny enough, they were down that end of the country for part of their unbeaten pre-season and a barbecue at Neil Warnock's, of course. I'd love to be at that barbecue. I'd love to see what happened there. We're going to be saying this a lot this season because we've got Neil Warnock as manager. But he's familiar with Town's opposition because he managed them between 1995 and 1997, and he led them to Wembley glory in the Division 3 playoff final. And he also admitted, I think, with yourself, Louis, if not everywhere, because Neil does like to, make it known. But he admitted that he gave advice to current Plymouth boss Stephen Schumacher on a handful of occasions last season. So hopefully he doesn't give him too much come Saturday. But Plymouth, obviously they're new to the championship this season. They were promoted as champions from League One, finishing on 101 points, 3 points clear of second place Ipswich Town, who are also in the division this season. Louis, I'll come to you first because you're making the journey, as you mentioned. You're going to be commentating on the game this weekend. Are you excited for this first game this season?
Yeah, I am. I think when the fixtures first come out, you think, oh, wow, Plymouth away on the first day. It had to be that, and that long trip. I think it's nice. It's the opening day. It's maybe for a lot of people, it might be a first time to home park. It certainly is for me. When it comes to football and football matches and football grounds, I love ticking off new grounds like a lot of us do. I'm a self-professed football ground nerd. I absolutely love it. So the fact I get to go down for work and go to Plymouth is great. Will I be enjoying the drive? I've got the company of Oggy and Matty, so that remains to be seen. But no, I'm really looking forward to this one, and it's nice, and I think it's very interesting. I think the way Town finished last season can't go underestimated. Plymouth, they're one of them, because people are talking about Ipswich, aren't they? Like, oh, Ipswich with the momentum, are they going to finish in the top six? They could be everyone's dark horses. On the other side of that, people are looking at Sheffield Wednesday and tipping them already for relegation. No one really knows where they stand with Plymouth. It feels they could finish mid-table, they could be an outsider for the playoffs, or they could go straight back down. So I'm actually really fascinated to see how this one plays out. Saying that, I think given the way Town finished last season, and obviously the first half of the season, because it was so poor, for me, Town should be looking at this game, a team who have been out of the Championship for such a while in Plymouth. You want to be eyeing that up and thinking of getting a positive result at the weekend. So I'm really excited to see how it goes, but it's very hard to call.
Yeah, definitely. And Tom, I suppose I was going to ask you the same thing. You never really know with a newly promoted side, but it's the season opener. How are you feeling about that one for Town?
You don't, do you? Because there can be so much optimism around the place when you've just been promoted. I mean, I always think the year we got promoted from League One to the Championship, the first time in a pretty similar situation, Plymouth have been in actually the first time in about 10 years or something like that. And we had such a good start to that season, and everyone was lauding Simon Grayson as this miracle worker. I think we were in the top 3 or 4, weren't we, after the first 10 games or something like that. And then it just kind of all went downhill when I think maybe we lost that kind of, I don't know, it's almost like they got that extra energy from just the excitement and got a bit tired out early on. So you might see Plymouth do something similar to that. They had such a good season last year. So there's going to be a bounce there. And, I mean, Schumacher's one of these managers that a lot of people are looking at and thinking he's got something about him, this lad. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough test, I think, Brady. And it's one of those where, I don't know, we might turn up and beat them 3-0 or they might do the same. Do you know what I mean? I just feel like it might have that vibe about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think like the classic I always tend to go is like you always get a few weird results early season as well. I think the caveat here, and we'll probably come on to it as well, is like the squads aren't finalised. I always think it's a little bit strange that you can still, like add to the transfer window, bring in players when you're like 4 or 5 games in. But we could be talking about a completely different team for Town, hopefully, because we do need those additions, as we'll touch on. But yeah, no, it's exciting. I'm kind of with you too. It's unexpected, and I think this is why it's fun to do the preview show for the first game of the season, because we've not got anything to go on really. But Tom, you're going to give us something to go on, because the metaphorical ball has gone out for a corner, and you're going to take us to a history corner. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm just gonna run through some stats about our time over the years against Plymouth. So the classic, and look, I could be so wrong. I mean, there's probably going to be a Town historian like, what? That's not right. But through my research, Brady, we've only played them 25 times in our history. Correction. We've won 25 games against them. We've drawn 14, lost 14. That was it. So,
Quite the correction.
So that's a good start to History Corner there. But it's in his favour, isn't it? First ever meeting in the 1920s. Town won 3-1 that day. I mean, we haven't played them now in a league game for about 10 years. I mean, we played them in the FA Cup, didn't we? 2 years ago, 2001, where we lost 3-2 at home. But the last time we played them in a league game, we won 3-2. Jordan Rhodes was on the score sheet that day, actually. Here's a really optimistic one for you. The biggest result in this fixture fell in favour of Plymouth, a 6-1 defeat away at their place in 1987, which was statistically Town's worst ever season. We've only 6 wins during that season. And one of those wins was actually against Plymouth, so it's a bit like... but it was during the famous 10-1 City defeat that as well. A couple of players who played for both teams. I mean, very, very recently, Brady, Kane Kessler-Hayden has just signed for Plymouth, hasn't he, in the last few weeks. Then we had Chris Billy, who, when Warnock left as well, and ended up at Plymouth. Over 100 appearances for him at Plymouth. Romney Critchlow was on loan a couple of years ago, wasn't he? And then I had another lad down who I remember seeing him at Town and thinking, bloody hell, this guy's talented. And he actually went on to Plymouth and be such a good player for them. And he's one of those players that was like, I just think he was happy to settle at League One and just basically be the best player in League One. And that was Graham Carey, who I just thought was such a good player on the wing. And he actually ended up going on to Plymouth and playing 170 times for them. And then obviously you've already touched on it, Brady. Neil Warnock managed Plymouth, got them promoted from Division 3. And there you go. There's a bit of a few historical stats for you.
Yeah, I like it, Tom. Good start to History Corner. You know, we all, like I said, we're a bit rusty here. So you didn't beat the first man, but then luckily you found it out and you whipped a good delivery in. So I enjoyed it. So obviously Tom touching on that as well. Just kind of, we don't really have any form to go on. I suppose I'll kind of ask you guys about what your thoughts are on pre-season. I know the lads who did the season preview touched on it there, but Plymouth have played 5 games in pre-season, which is a little bit more than us. But they did lose recently. The most recent one, I think it was about 3 or 4 days ago, to Swindon 3-1. But they have won 3 of their other 4 matches in preparation for the season. Louis, what do you think about pre-season? Do you think we can take anything from it, or is it just is it the classic like it's just fitness? We can't make any conclusions.
I'm unfortunately gonna go with the cliche, and it is all about minutes in the legs for me. It's hard, isn't it? Because as football fans, we want our team to win, and if our teams lose, even if it's a friendly, we're disappointed. I think, especially in the days of social media as it is, I think some supporters maybe go into a bit of panic mode. I actually agree exactly with what you said, Brady, before we went to the History Corner, in the fact the transfer window's still open for another 4 or 5 weeks. So I always think any team could have a good start or a poor start, but it's when you get to the 3rd of September and you can see what squad they're actually now going to have until the Christmas period, the New Year period, more should I say, is when you get more of an idea. Obviously, it's nice to see your team have thumping wins over pre-season. You don't want to see them lose. But for me, I'm always like, it's about the fitness. Saying that, on the flip side, I did really enjoy seeing Kyle Hudlin score the winning goal at the weekend. So I've maybe been, gone against my own beliefs there. But I'm saying as long as they're fit, which I think under Neil Warnock there will be, we shouldn't read too much into pre-season, whether it's win, lose, or draws.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree, Louis. I think I'm similar. But Tom, are you of a similar mindset, or is it when, like, say, someone like Hudlin does well, you're like, well, actually, for the season,
we might have a player there.
Yeah, I mean, what I take from this pre-season, because there was a few games behind closed doors, wasn't there? But that was a bit more B-teamy layout and stuff like that. So, I mean, I think I take from this pre-season that we only conceded 1 goal, which was pretty. I think he's doing something right there. I know we played 3 teams who were basically the equivalent of Galkey United almost, but to only concede the 1 goal in the 5 games is pretty good. I think the Stockport result is quite a impressive one, in my opinion. They're no mug, Stockport. I don't think they set up that weekly either on that game. And I think in those 2 games, we touched on it, Hudlin actually really impressed, and especially when him and Harrott were on together, that I was actually quite excited by that. And it's quite a step up going into the Championship and it not being that kind of friendly atmosphere that they're playing in. But I don't know. I definitely think there's positives to it. I mean, the positive is we've not lost in pre-season. It's got to be, hasn't it? Like, I think you'd be very worried if out of those games we'd lost the odd one. So
yeah, I mean, I follow a QPR fan. He asked me to do a pre-season thing for them, asking how we'll get on, and they lost 5-0 to Oxford, and they weren't happy about that. So we can. I think it's one of them, isn't it? Like you say, because we've done well, you don't really give them credit, but also if it went bad, you would certainly be pointing to that as a concern for the season. So it's interesting. It's one of them, isn't it? I suppose that's why we like to chat about it. It gives us something to chat about. But Tom, because we're playing Plymouth for the first time in a while, I was really keen to see what they're thinking ahead of the season. You spoke to someone in our fan phone in, didn't you?
I did. I had a quick call with Aaron, the Plymouth fan, and here it is.
Hello, this is Tom Bradshaw, and you're listening to the Fan Phone-In. Hello, caller. Tell us about your team.
Hello, Argyle fan in peace here.
What was your favourite moment of last season?
Well, I think there's one main one, lifting the League One title away at Port Vale, a 3-1 win, pipping Ipswich Town and Sheffield Wednesday to the post, doing it as Centurions on an away day. Port Vale were great hosts as well. Just an incredible day. But I think actually my favourite moment, if you were to put it down into one moment rather than a whole season, it would have to be Barley Mumba's equaliser in the 96th, 97th minute on loan from Norwich, smashing one top bins away at Portman Road.
What are you looking forward to most about the Championship?
Competing, just if we can compete. But again, that's quite broad. So a smaller thing about the Championship, I'd say the opening day at home to Huddersfield Town, because I think that is a huge gauge of where we're at. I think in the nicest possible way, I don't think we could have been given a better starting fixture. And I think you've been written off by everyone, including ourselves, on our podcast to go down. And I think, I think that's a good starting test. But what else am I looking forward to in the Championship? The playing against some of the big boys again.
Who is your favourite player and why?
Favourite player would have to be Michael Cooper. I think you're quite lucky that Connor Hazard or Callum Burton look set to start in goal against yourselves, as Michael Cooper's out injured till September. So I'll give you one. Michael Cooper. He's standout player, best player, favourite player. League One's been named the League One team of the season 2 years in a row, ahead of Bazunu and Trafford. But I'll give you one that you'll actually see. Let's go with Callum Wright. I think he's not the stereotypical Whittaker or Mumba that you know about. Callum Wright has a lot to prove in the Championship. I think he's let go. He was sold by Leicester to Blackpool and then not used by Blackpool in their relegation season from the Championship. So I think he has a lot to prove. He came on leaps and bounds. We signed him in January last season, and he complemented our crop incredibly well.
Who is your manager and what are your thoughts?
Steven Schumacher is, without doubt, the best manager in the EFL for in-game changes and but both tactical and personnel. 22 goals came from substitutes last season, 27 points from losing positions. If we fall behind, Schumacher gives us belief that we'll get something from the game. And won the league of 101 points. You can't really slate a manager that does that, and there's nothing to slate him for.
What summer signing are you most excited about?
Everybody knows about Mumba and Whittaker, but I think the one I'm excited for as I play in defence of a Sunday League team, I am a defender at heart, and I think the one I am looking forward to seeing is Julio Pleguezelo. He is a centre-back who has been in the academies of Espanyol, Barcelona and Arsenal. He's returned to England because his family are here from his early days in Arsenal. He's our first ever Spaniard, and he has turned down the chance to play European football, albeit Europa Conference, but still European football with SA Twente, to sign for Plymouth Argyle. So that just in itself is absolutely madness. He'll either be an incredible signing or a complete flop, and I hope it is the former rather than the latter.
What are the best pubs for away fans?
Your best bet is to hit the Barbican. So down in the harbour, the Barbican, as it's known locally, there's quite a few around there. That up near the ground, there's not really much. There's a Weatherspoons, but that's home fans. Your best bet go in town. There's plenty of buses and taxis and stuff that should take you to the ground if needs be. But it's a nice little walk, albeit up a hill, to the ground from the city centre. Hopefully, if it's sunny on Saturday, that'll be the best place to be anyway.
What are your expectations for the season?
Just stay up. I'm not. A lot of people will be tipping us for bigger things than is necessary. The second tier podcast have us in 12th. I think not the top 20 have us quite high. And yeah, don't. For me, I wouldn't listen to any of that. We are still 5 or 6 bodies short of a competitive championship squad. Playing us on the opening day might be your best bet as well. I think that's a fairly even fixture because the transfer window hasn't shut yet. So, yeah, expectations are purely just stay up.
And what score do you think it will be against Huddersfield Town?
See, I was talking to Matt of this parish about this game, and I think he seems to think it'll be quite tight, but I think either we'll get battered or we'll batter you. So let's go score prediction. Let's go 3-1. But I'm not saying who to. Wishing you all a safe trip down to Plymouth. I know it's a long way. We have to do that 23 times in the season. So I don't feel that sorry for you. But I hope you all get down there safe. Enjoy the barbecue, enjoy the game. And hopefully we keep the 3 points in Plymouth.
And there we go, Brady. A brilliant chat that was. He was obviously very optimistic, happy about the last season. He's quite optimistic about Saturday, actually. I think he seems to think they will have some sort of bounce coming off last year, and he's kind of taking note what a lot of people are saying and putting us down in that kind of bottom 3 this year. And he didn't kind of shy away from that, but he seems pretty happy with it. He doesn't think they're gonna be one of those teams, like you mentioned, Louis, that could break into that kind of top 6, because he still thinks they're a few players short. So it'd be interesting what they do in this remaining month as well, Brady, like you've touched on.
Yeah, I think they've signed well as well, to be fair. Certainly if you eye-catching things, and you talked about Kessler Hayden earlier, I'd be really intrigued to see how he gets on with the full season, because not that it particularly mattered, but I still think recalling him when he was just looking good and bringing in Matt Loughton, that didn't work out, did it? So be interesting, because I think he showed a little bit, and as he was coming to the end of his loan spell. But just before we go to the break, it's time for everyone's favourite. It's Kwana's question. So Kwana's question this week was, as I mentioned earlier, there's 315 miles separating the John Smith Stadium and Plymouth Town Park. So we wanted to know from the listeners, and I will be asking Louis and Tom, what the furthest distance you've travelled to watch Huddersfield Town. So the first one straight away, literally 20 seconds after we put this out, was from Chris Jowett, and he said it was Exeter away in 1976. Lost 4-1 with Arnie Sidebottom scoring our consolation goal. However, the Supporters Club beat Exeter Supporters Club 8-5. So I was like, take the positives out of that.
Who's the real winner?
Who is the other one? So I think this is going to beat anything I've got, certainly. And we've got quite a few of these. But Cam Fry said he travelled 1,245 kilometres or 774 miles. I give you both. That's what we do on this podcast. Cam travelled that distance with his son from his hometown Dolbergen near Hanover in Germany to see Town at Blackpool. But unfortunately for him, as he mentioned, it was that dreadful 2-2 after against Blackpool last season, where we were in front twice against 10 men.
Might as well stay down.
Exactly. However, he did stay. I messaged him saying, "Oh, that's unlucky," but he did stay for Neil's first game in charge against Birmingham. So at least he got that. That's very Town for me. You got the good and the bad there. And I think this is the best one. Obviously, we know Jerry Hinnon. He travelled quite a distance. I forget what it was, but Alison Charlesworth, she said she travelled 5,230 kilometres, which is 3,250 miles from Mystic Connecticut, which is what a great name for a place that is, Mystic. Because she worked in the USA for 2.5 seasons, and she managed about 3 games a season, which is some going. I think that's very impressive and certainly beats anything I've got. There was plenty of quite the distances, and it just kind of shows you. I know we like to talk town down, but quite a few fans making a lot of distance to get there. Louis, what about yourself? What's the furthest distance you've travelled? We were kind of talking about this before you were recording.
It's nowhere near as impressive as coming from Germany or the USA, I'm afraid. To be fair, it's over borders country-wise. It's probably Swansea away. 263 miles. I'll have to check that in K. There and back, obviously. And it's funny because I've done the last 2 trips to Swansea. They were both 1-0 defeats. And I kid you not, guys, you could have, the second time I went, you could have just played a carbon copy of the game from the season before. It was drab. Both sides were drab. Swansea, I recall in both games, got a pretty lucky goal, especially in the one under Neil Warnock. It took a big deflection in the second half. And I remember just leaving the ground and all 3 of us just felt a little bit deflated. So it'll definitely be Swansea in terms of distance. This season just gone, though. The reward was we did Swansea. 2 weeks later, the 3 of us did Cardiff, which is 40 miles less. But obviously that was a great day out, even though it threw it down with rain all day. So around South Wales.
Oh, good to hear. Good to hear. It sounds like you're stuck in a kind of Twin Peaks situation with Swansea then. So, hopefully you'll say, Lou, you don't have to cover it this season.
I'm a bad luck omen when it comes to Swansea away. So apologies in advance if I'm put on that game this season.
Well, listeners, you know what to text in about if Lou is covering that game. So, not that we want to give you abuse, Louis. That's save it for us, guys. But Tom, what about yourself? What's the furthest distance you did?
Well, I'd done Plymouth once before, and that was an experience. Got the coach as well and everything. So I think we were up at about something stupid like 4:00 in the morning to travel down, and they lost 2-1. I think that was the last season we met them in the league. So 2011, I think. It was a weird place. But that they've done a lot to the ground since then as well, because I remember the big stand to the left where you are on the away end basically was just empty because I think it was basically falling down, and then I kind of cut a holiday short in France and travelled back for the Villa away game in 2016-17 season. And I think that was just over 500 miles. So a bit of Proclaimers potentially on the way then. So
was that the Heffley game where it went off his arse?
His arse. Yeah, beautiful night.
Yeah, that was great. Mine's very tame in comparison. Mine was the 2022 player final. I actually went away for my girlfriend's birthday and went to Robin Hood's Bay. I left in the morning from Robin Hood's Bay to get to Wembley. Luckily, it all turned out well, though, given that game. But yeah, it took me about 6 hours and 260 miles.
The day of the playoff final, I'm intrigued to hear this. That wasn't the day of your girlfriend's actual birthday, was it?
No, it was the day.
Nice, good answer.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was the day. It was the day before, I think. Anyway, yeah.
Anyway, moving quickly on.
Got me sweating earlier. Anyway, it's probably a good time for a break because we're approaching half-time here. So if you, like me, when you're watching down at home, like to nip down to the concourse and get yourself a tasty refreshment at the bar, while we have an ad break, don't forget you can get 10% off all online orders with the code AHTTC10 at magicrockbrewing.com. Tom's very, very expertly doing some product placement there, drinking some Magic Rock beer out of his Magic Rock glass. Use the code. And I forgot to do this. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see our little ticker for that. If it shows, there it shows. Lovely stuff. Right, okay, we're going to take a break and we'll come back. Okay, so we've done the first half focusing on Plymouth. So if you like, we've swapped sides. We're going to look at Town. So let's get stuck into them, chaps. We sent out a Twitter poll asking fans how they're feeling about the season ahead of our opener against Plymouth. And so there's 4 options. There was calm, confident, concerned, or other. and I will come to you both and ask your opinions. But in terms of people feeling about the season before this game on Saturday, 53% said they were calm, 15% said they were confident, 30% said they were concerned, and 2% said other. So yeah, Tom, there's a few options there. I was a little bit surprised. The calm won by 53%. How are you feeling out of all those?
I actually am feeling calm.
Okay.
I actually think I'm in that kind of. I just think Warnock. I mean, it might get a bit nervy at times, but I just think he'll do us a job this year. And I kind of think that's the only reason he is here. It's just to have that stability and know. I mean, it's not a guarantee. Obviously, it's not a guarantee, but it's he's going to give it. He's going to give us the best chance if we aren't going to bring many more bodies in of keeping us in this division. So I'm kind of calm from that point of view, I think. Yeah. What about you?
Well, I'll temper this because I know the lads got a few comments because they were came across as maybe a bit negative with some of the feedback. I am concerned. I think what I will caveat is I think this is how I'm feeling now before this game on Saturday. And then I appreciate we've still got the transfer window. We've said we want to bring in these people, but I'm a little bit concerned that although Warnock got a lot out of the squad, we have let a lot of people go. And while they're not first team starters, I think it does make the squad a little bit. Our starting 11 is still really good, but I think the squad is a little bit thin currently. So I'm a little bit concerned because I think it's asking a lot from Neil Warnock, who obviously came in and did miracles last season. I think it's asking a lot with him, even with his kind of magic wand with the squad currently. I kind of, it's interesting. You look at the predictions and we're down there. We are in a relegation scrap, and I don't really disagree at time of recording. So I am a little bit worried. Midfield actually worries me. I know there's all this talk about a striker, but I think we're quite light in midfield, and you're asking a lot of some youngsters to perform. And look, if anyone can get a tune out of the squad, we saw it's Neil Warnock. But yeah, I think it might be asking a lot. But Louis, kind of same question for you. How are you feeling about Town this season?
I think it's a tough one. I totally understand your concerns and other people's concerns. I know we're going to talk about transfers. You're spot on with the midfield. I am more on the calm side though, simply because the poor runs that Town went on last season, I can't see that happening under Neil Warnock. Now, we can all happily admit, can't we, that the Town squad at the moment certainly isn't the best on paper in the Championship. I mean, you only have to look at Leicester and Southampton, don't you, to know that's not the case. But we know what Neil Warnock does best. He gets a tune out of players. He gets players running through a brick wall for him. I don't feel with him in the dugout, things will get as bad as it did last season. I'll hold my hands up. After Coventry at home last season, walked out the ground, and I was like, even with Neil Warnock, this team's done. I said that when we left the Bet365, that awful evening at the Bet365 just before Neil Warnock came back. I can't see myself, or I can't see the team getting to a point where people start thinking that. I think there's a lot to be said in the EFL, in whether that's Championship, League One or League Two, about effort, commitment, desire, working for each other. Yeah, I agree with you. They are a bit light in certain areas, but I'm verging on calm simply because I can't see them getting themselves in a predicament like they did last year.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point, and probably good for the listeners, given how it was quite. I think the lads were quite realistic, I'd say, but maybe some people would say pessimistic. But look, football's about opinions. That's all I will say. What I think is interesting, I know we touched on earlier about pre-season, how Town are actually unbeaten in pre-season. We talked about how can you read much into that, but something I wanted to kind of remind people was Neil Warnock's second spell as Town manager, and actually, talking about how good a job it was. So He was in charge for 15 matches. We won 7 of those, drew 4 and lost 4, and he got 25 points out of 45. Tom, are you? I don't. We've had a little conversation. I'm not expecting you to say it's going to be like that for this season, but are you expecting, kind of good form to maybe continue for the start of the season?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you've got, and Cozzy has mentioned this before, and he's mentioned like how when Warnock was with Sheffield United and they pretty much did the same Warnock pre-season, and you kind of just get that morale up, and I mean it works. It's tried and tested. He's done it with Cardiff. He did it with Sheffield United. Did it with QPR. Do you know what I mean? So I think it will almost look. Someone else mentioned it that us staying up last year almost felt like we got promoted, weirdly enough, to the Championship. So we might be in a very similar situation to Plymouth, where there is a bit of kind of excitement in the camp. There's the group look really happy. The videos that I've seen, everyone looks really together. Everyone obviously is there to play for Neil Warnock. So I do think we could see some of this form continue, especially at the start of the season. But then the concern is if we do pick up injuries like we did last year, to continue that.
We've lost him, but he's returned.
He's back.
Did you hear the end of that?
I didn't, but you can tell us all. I'll keep this in as well.
Okay, I just said. Did you get to if we get injuries?
No, carry on.
Okay, it was basically. I think if we. The concern is, Brady, if we did start to pick up injuries this year, is the squad depth big enough to keep any form going? Possibly not.
No, I think that's a really good point. But Louis, obviously you were at a lot of pressers last year with Neil, and Tom talked about that good morale. I'm guessing you could kind of see that with the interviews and with the player interviews. Do you think that was really? I don't know. I'm assuming that's really important, obviously, to have good morale. But can you feel that maybe? I know you're speaking to Neil on Thursday, but do you kind of get that from looking from the outside with pre-season? Do you think that kind of good morale is going to carry on?
I certainly think so. I think going back to last season, I think what was interesting when Neil came back to the club, it was suddenly all about him, which some people might say isn't a good thing, and people shouldn't make it all about them. I think that's actually what that squad needed last season, because they were under so much criticism, under so much pressure. Neil Warnock came in, and suddenly the story wasn't Huddersfield Town being in this horrible relegation battle. It was about Neil Warnock and Sharon letting him have one last chance, and that transpired to the players. I remember thinking very early on, after he came back, thinking, he seems really relaxed given the challenge ahead. But the players started feeling a bit calmer. And he mentioned he name-checked Romani Edmonds-Green pretty early on, I think after the Birmingham game. And, he just talked Oggy through. He put an arm around his shoulder and said, this is what I want from you, and I think you can do it. And if you just... I think it's important in any walk of life. If you're a good manager and you can keep that morale up, I think that's massive. It's very privileged in the job we do. We cover a few Bradford games, as I'm sure you know, and we did a few games last season with Lee Duxbury, who, of course, played at Town. I know a lot of the listeners will be familiar with his name. Was part of the team that won promotion at Wembley under Neil Warnock, and he tells the classic stories, the pre-seasons, the trips to the pub, the bowling trips, the playing cards in his backyard, and he said honestly, you can't underestimate how important that is, because you would go out on the pitch on Saturday and you might lose, or you might not put 10 out of 10 in, but effort-wise and commitment-wise, you would do all you can because of the man in the dugout. So I think that in terms of morale is massive. And that is a really long-winded answer to your question, Brady. So I do apologise for that. But I really can see the morale staying there. I think they're excited. I spoke to Tom Edwards last week. He can't wait to get going. He said it's a long old trip, but he spoke to Neil and now he can't wait to get going and playing competitive games. And I think that'll transcend through the whole squad.
No worries at all. It wasn't long-winded. I think we needed that positivity, given the preview was a bit frank, I'd say. So no, good to hear, Louis. You touched on some of the new additions, Tom. Obviously, at time of recording, it's only Chris Maxwell and Tom Edwards, as Louis mentioned there. What do you kind of make of those moves? I know we've not really touched on them.
I think Edwards is could potentially be quite an exciting one. I didn't realise how young he was, to be fair. When I thought when I saw we'd sign him, I just thought he was one of Stoke's potential. Do you know what I mean? Who's been there for ages, but he has been there for a while. But he was young when he broke on the scene, wasn't he? So I did think in the friendly he looked pretty good. I mean, that throw-in's going to be a good arsenal. What do you call it? Words.
Secret weapon.
See, isn't it? It looked great. I don't know about Maxwell. I mean, Matt had a nice little summary of him, like his time at Preston. He was pretty good, and then he went to Blackpool and wasn't so good. But then you could say, was he a bit of a secret agent from the Preston side at the time? So, I mean, as a backup to Lee Nichols, as long as we keep Lee Nichols, I think it's a sensible one.
Yeah, I mean, I did a tweet when we signed Edwards, obviously a little bit tongue-in-cheek about quoting him on that throw he learned from Rory Delap, and I was like, oh, here we go, Warnock. I can see that being launched into Kyle Hudlin's 6'9" body. But I think it's the classic, isn't it? It's a bit like I was talking about this. It's kind of the comparison when you review seasons, and I was like, these aren't the most exciting signings. They're probably going to come late in the window, fingers crossed. But you'd be saying how good these, we needed a right back. We probably did need a second choice who's a bit closer to Nichols. And I think if these would come after the more exciting signings, you'd probably be looking at this as, good additions. Whereas I think, because let's be honest, it's not sexy to sign a second choice goalkeeper and a right back. So I'm kind of with you. But we spoke to, I'm sure listeners might have seen on our social channels, but spoke to Ben Rowley, who's a Stoke fan, and he was saying you could do a lot worse than Tom Edwards. It's kind of stuff going on behind the scenes with a manager previously that he didn't get a look in, but Barnsley fans seem to rate him as well. So I think it's an exciting one. But we'll kind of come back to the game yourself, because it's time for You're the Boss, and how I'll be keen to say how you guys would approach this. So Plymouth are slight favourites for this. I was having a quick look at the odds, but I think that's probably due to home advantage, and it's a bit of a hard one to call, as we were touching on. But Louis, what do you kind of make of this contest from a Huddersfield perspective? Do you think it's a game we'll be kind of going to win, or do you think we'll kind of use it as a get our feet under the table, maybe a point's not so bad away from home?
I think given the distance, and I know some people won't like to hear this, and I think given the momentum that Plymouth will obviously have, I don't think a point on the opening day would be the worst thing in the world. As we said in the first half, it's so hard to call, isn't it? A team who have got 101 points, even though it was in the league below, are clearly a good team. They're clearly going to have momentum. But I do think Huddersfield Town, especially as we keep coming back to it, under Neil Warnock, and we know Neil will do that, of course they should go down there looking to win it. I think it's fair to say if it was Leicester away on the first day of the season, you'll be like, right, what's our second game? We can write that off and see what happens, because look at the money Leicester have spent, and they've got a good squad anyway. But now I don't see any reason why Town shouldn't go there to win that. However, if they do walk away with a 1-1 or an entertaining 2-2, I don't think anyone would be that disappointed. But saying that, Leicester at home, there's Middlesbrough to come, there's some tough opponents in that first cluster of fixtures, isn't there? So I think, given the fact Plymouth have just come up, I would be looking to go and win that if I was the manager. And I'm sure Neil will be.
Oh, absolutely. Tom, do you share the same sentiment? Do you think we should... it is early, but we've got an interesting, some would say on paper, quite maybe a bit hard of an opening run. So would you be targeting this one as one of the easier games for a win?
I wouldn't say easy, but I'd say I'd have it as a come on, you've got to be looking at. You almost want to say to the players, right? We've got to put these lads in their place. They've just come up. We can't let them get at us early on. You want to keep the fans quiet early on. If Town can get an early goal first 15, 20 minutes, because it's going to be a great atmosphere in there, and it's sold out. They'll be buzzing back in the Championship. Fingers crossed the weather's nice. It'll be like a nice day down there and all that. It'd probably be an excellent atmosphere. And basically, Town have just got to go there and spoil the party. And I think you might have to. I mean, if you want a manager in charge for that kind of thing, it's probably Neil Warnock as well.
Absolutely. Oh well, guys, you really you're bigging me up. I feel like I'm getting a sense of deja vu here. I feel like I'm not so sure about a game, and then I listen to who we have on, and I get all excited. But we'll move on because we're just about to finish off there, but we'll come on to our match predictions. So we always do our match predictions normally, as we do, but this year we're actually going to keep track of it. So I'll come to you both. We're going to do a little spreadsheet. You can keep track of it all season, and we'll see if the guests win overall, or if me or Tom are victorious. So I'm excited for this. So Tom, I'll come to you first. What's your first match prediction of the season? Give me a scoreline.
I mean, it will be a very tough game, but I'm just confident off the kind of the back end of pre-season, and hopefully the players are all together. It's really difficult, this, Brady, because I kind of want to say a Town win, but just in the back of my mind, I just think it'll be a draw. I think maybe 1-1 draw. That's what I'll go with.
Okay, so you're going 1-1 draw.
Yeah.
Okay. So how we'll work it, if listeners are bothered to know, it'll be 3 points for a correct result in terms of scoreline, and 1 point if you get if it's a win or a draw. You'll also get a bonus point if you get one of the correct scorers. So Tom, who are you predicting to score for Town?
Josh Koroma.
Lovely stuff. Louis, what about yourself? What's your match prediction for this one?
I'm going to be more optimistic. You've probably noticed, actually, over the course of the last 30 to 40 minutes, I'm quite an optimistic guy. I think Plymouth will certainly have momentum. I think Tom's bang on. It'll be an absolutely brilliant atmosphere. I'm so excited to go and cover the game, and that's a massive privilege. I do think, again, like Tom says, Town will take the lead, and I think that will just completely, pardon the pun, because we're in Plymouth, take the wind out of their sails. And then I could see Town in true Neil Warnock fashion, and I mean this with the best will in the world, soaking up a bit of pressure in that second half, then getting a second goal and winning 2-0. I'm optimistic for Town, I am.
Yes, Louis. Who are you predicting to score?
So this is a tough one. I'm going to go, and it's a bit of a wild card, I'm going to go with Sorba Thomas for 1. Because he's got a point to prove. And you look back at last season, you think, why would you let Sorba Thomas go to a fellow Championship team on loan? Anyway, that's in the past. It seems Neil Warnock has taken a bit of a shine to him this pre-season, doesn't it? From an outsider looking in, I think he'll want to prove a point. Could be wrong. And then I'm going to go for either Heilich or Pearson from a corner, a nice header. I mean, Pearson became accustomed to that last season. So one of the defenders. If I've got to choose, we'll go Pearson.
Nice. Okay. So I like this because obviously, not that Louis knew coming into this, but if you go for more scores and get those correct goal scorers, you could really win this. I like it. I like your positivity, Louis. We need that, particularly after last season for 2/3 of it. I'm also going to go for. I think you're exactly right, Tom. Like you were saying, I think they'll be bouncing its first game of the season in the new league. They were champions, and I do think they'll cause us problems. But who's really good at sucking the life out of stuff and ruining the party? Neil Warnock. I'm going to go 1-0 Town, and I'm going to go for Neil Warnock's son, as he regularly referred to at the event he did at the town hall, Danny Ward. I think Danny Ward is going to get the winner for Town in classic fashion. Cool. Right, here's hoping anyway. But we have approached full time normally anyway, but we do have a little bit of extra time, additional time in this podcast. So we're going to move on to the mailbag. Okay, so maybe our listeners were having a little, like they got a little nervous for pre-seasons, but do keep your questions coming because you guys sent some really good ones last season, and we've got 2 good ones here. I'm going to come first with Mark Harrison's question. Mark regularly sends us stuff, so thank you, Mark. He was saying, are Town better with 1 or 2 up front? He says, with our current squad, 3-5-2 looks like the best option to him. Tom, thoughts? You talked a little bit about Harrott and Hudlin, but yeah, what do you think?
I'd probably say, yeah. I mean, just from off, I feel like over that pre-season we played better when we had 2 up front, or it just looked a bit more exciting. I really did think when Harrott and Hudlin came on against Heravin, that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. I did think they looked exciting together. I think Harrott has really kind of progressed this season. So, yeah, I would say yes to Mark with 2 up front.
Nice. Louis, what about yourself? I mean, you'll have time to probably pour over this on the drive down.
It is a tough one because I'm really keen to see Cian Harrott this season. I saw a bit of him at Bradford last season. Didn't really get a massive chance there, and in the end didn't really work out as for reasons we know why. So I'm looking forward to seeing Cian. I'm really interested to see Kyle Hudlin, especially in league action. I think I would still stick with 1 up top. And some people might disagree with me. I would still go with Danny Ward up top. And the reason being, I'd then play 3 behind him. I'd play Rodoni in the number 10, and I'd have Sorba and Josh Koroma on the wings. I think the players you can play in that more attacking midfield role as the manager, they're the ones you'd be looking at that maybe cause a few more problems than playing your Harrods and your Hudlins together up front. For now, I would like to, see that experiment at some point this season, maybe coming off the bench, maybe switching to that. Obviously, we all know Neil's so tactically astute. He will change it up at times. I think for Plymouth, I'd definitely be looking to have Sorba and Josh on those wings and Danny Ward up top.
I think the 2 has worked really well when the game has been stretched in these pre-seasons, hasn't it? And that's a real, for me, that's quite a good sign, isn't it? It's like, if, for example, when they went down to 10 men the other day, and then when teams are kind of trying to get back into a game, if we have that option to bring on the 2 and go more attacking rather than more defensive as well, it's quite nice to see, isn't it?
Watford away last season was a great example, wasn't it? We brought Harrott on, so but then maybe I'm just thinking too much about my Football Manager's tactic with 1 up top. So I stick to that religiously.
No, you're in good company, Louis. We regularly talk about Football Manager on here and formations. I was having a look into this. The boring answer is, we tend to switch it up a lot, which I think is good. Because I think looking at that Heravin game, I saw Stephen Chicken, but we kind of like 4-2-3-1 on the ball and then 3-5-2 off it. I think I quite like the 3-5-2, but I think it's a classic case of like, depends on the game situation. Sorry to be boring, and who the opposition, because I think the one that stood out to me, talking about Josh Koroma, because he's been mentioned, but when we were playing a 2 against Sheffield United in that must-win game, Josh Koroma was unplayable for half an hour in that game, and I think he really benefits having a runner like Ward. But as you both have touched on, having options like Harrott and Hudlin, although they're young lads, but they have shown that they can contribute in small amounts. So interesting. I think it's good. Like, I know we talked about the lack of squad, and you're asking a lot of young lads to do stuff, but we do have some options and some different options, which I think is good. And our final question is from Marcus Burlett. He says, an obvious one, but what position do you think we need to still recruit for the season? He's also asked if we've got any specific names. Tom, I'll throw it straight to you. I don't have any specific names, but you might do. They might be realistic, they might not.
Well, I don't really have any specific names. I think they touched on it very interestingly, a very good point as well. I think Matt made it on the preview of the season podcast about how it might be quite difficult to sign people because they only know Warnock's here for a season, so they're coming to play for they're only coming to play for a season. He said, "Is that why Edwards is only here on loan?" kind of thing as well. So I think you've got to look in the loan market. It's difficult. There's a few freebies that you could potentially say, oh, maybe who have also played under Warnock. I thought Jack Colbeck would have been a good one to get for a year, but he's just gone to QPR today, so that's a shame. And then maybe you look down into League One, but have Town got the cash to maybe spend money on someone like, I don't know, Callum Styles or I don't know, Brady, Max Bird. Do you know what I mean? Those kind of players. Someone who's young and hungry, but I think Matt did. Matt did a really good article that you should read about Jonathan Hogg, and he did a good kind of metric of Town's got one really, really experienced midfielder, and then all the others kind of fall in the category of learning. They're still learning. We need someone in between. So, I think you're right, Brady, in the sense that attack. Yeah, you always need a striker. Everyone's going to say striker every season, but this year we might actually need a midfielder more than anything.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think Matt's matrix is kind of that's a nice alliteration there. I think that's really telling, because even you think you assume Diarra's like one of the youngsters, and you kind of think, oh, maybe Radoni and Kasuma are experienced, but they're still like in their early 20s. So that's the position that kind of sticks out for me. I think we do need that, for me, like a really good passer. I always think of someone where I'd love to get, and obviously played for us before, but like Ollie Norwood. I feel like we need someone like that who's going to make it tick and play those really clever balls. And I don't think Town could get him, but that's kind of what we need. So I'm with you, and I do think it's clear. I think it's no surprise, but it doesn't seem like Jordan Rhodes is very fancied. And you talk about the gap between youth as much as we talked about the positives of Harrett and Hudlin. Again, they're young lads. I think anything they do is good, is a bonus, really. And I do think you've only really got Danny Ward, who's an experienced striker. So if Rhodes is going to go out the door, which from the sounds of it may be the case, then I think I think we do need someone to bridge that gap as well. It's interesting how both kind of have a similar thing. We need someone at that kind of, maybe at the peak, really, like 26, 27, but they're not cheap. So we'll have to see. Louis, what about yourself? Where do you think Town need to look at?
I think it is the obvious ones. It's the central midfield, especially, as much as we all love Jonathan Hogg, with all due respect to him. Like, he's not getting any younger, is he? We know he'll do a great job. I think Tom made the point earlier, you have to worry if there's injuries. Some of the... I'm interested to see how Jack Radoni gets on, because I think he actually had a good 15 games under Neil Warnock, and there's clearly a player in there. But you've got to be looking at, if you're Warnock or you have to be looking at bringing in a central midfielder. It's such a shame, such a crying shame. And I'm sorry to bring them both up, how Harry Toffolo and Lewis O'Brien's Forest careers have gone.
You had to bring it. You had to mention those names.
But all I would say is, if Town are feeling a bit adventurous, could they maybe say how much would it be to take someone on loan like that? Look at a Forest who have a massive squad. I think the gem is unearthing a Premier League loanee from a big club, a la Levi Colwill, either in midfield or up front, isn't it? More Levi Colwill than Tino Andrin, maybe, who came with so much promise, with all due respect to him. Max Bird was one I was going to say, Tom. I've seen a few rumours flying around. All I can say is that I think they are just rumours, that Hull was sniffing around him. You'd imagine, though, Derby would want quite a big fee for someone like Max Bird, because they rate him really highly, don't they? And he might want to stay under Paul Warne, and Derby look favourites to win that league. He might want to be a part of that. So I think central midfield's vital. I think, again, me being optimistic, if I was feeling cheeky, I'd ring up Nottingham Forest and say, go on then, let us take him back on loan for a season.
I mean, I don't think that's crazy. I don't think that's crazy, because he's out of favour there. He's not gonna get in again, is it? That last season they bought players just to keep them up, and the way they're chairman works, they'll be now probably looking to recruit more and push on. And unfortunately, I just don't think O'Brien fits in that picture.
I think the thing is, and people might say I'm being a bit realistic with this. I think out of favour's key, Tom. You're right. He probably won't get back in that squad. I can't imagine him being on the highest wages in the world. He was linked with Leeds, wasn't he, before he went to Forest? He's not going to be linked with a side near the top of the table, I don't think. If he does want to rebuild his career, rebuild's maybe a bit of a strong word, then why not? It's certainly worth asking the question whether they do or not. Who knows? But I would be looking at someone like that. He knows the club, he loves the club, and we know what he can do.
Oh, well, thank you, Louis, because I can do a very salacious tweet. BBC journalist says Lewis O'Brien. Thank you for that.
And I'm not going to Plymouth if that's the case.
I'd love it. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird, isn't it? I don't feel like we've ever replaced him, so who better to replace Lewis O'Brien?
I do have another name that I'll throw out if I want to upset you even more. And I would look at someone, and he's now playing in America like Lewis O'Brien, but someone, not him specifically, but maybe someone of the ilk of Matthias Klick, who's okay in his 30s now. He's got a lot of championship experience, okay for the lot down the road, but he's been in successful championship sides, looked pretty good in the Premier League in spells. It's that kind of player, I think, Town need to be looking at, who, like you say, maybe not as old as Jonathan Hogg, but not someone you can class as a youngster. You want someone, a bit like you said about Ollie Norwood, who can dictate the play, who's been there and done it a little bit streetwise. And I think that kind of player is someone, a Norwood, a Klick, someone like that. Warnock could love that. Again, you can maybe start a list of Louis' stupid transfer suggestions. But they would be, if it was me on Football Manager, I'd be throwing in cheeky bids for those kind of players.
No, I like it, Louis. I like it. I think we talked about Klick before we went to DC,
Louis.
We like him. So
is Adam Forshaw out of contract as well?
He's released
again. He's been released by Leeds, and I mean, injury prone. He has been at times, hasn't he? But again, experienced midfielder, and when he's fit, he always puts a shift in. Again, a player that Neil Warner could love, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not keen on Forshaw, but that's because I have a friend at work who's a Leeds fan who's not big on him. So maybe I'm blinded by judgment. And yes, listeners, I am friends with Leeds fans. Oh no, I know it's terrible.
It's turned into ex-Leeds podcast this last few seconds, hasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, me and Matt are still hoping for Aaron Moy to come back to Town, even though he's retired. So we could get into that. I mean, we used to have a section return to the Mac, so that's basically that was our transfer recruitment. But yeah, I think we'll leave it there, and we can talk off mic about all the transfers we'd like to see in midfield. But yeah, I think that's it. But we'll do that. So that's the first preview episode of the season. So Tom and I will be back to preview the next game, which is Leicester City. Louis, thanks very much for coming on, and excellent debut, if I do say so myself.
Thank you for having me. I hope my transfer wants aren't too ridiculous. I'm awaiting the tweets.
And we will put Louis' handle out so you can tweet. But I think you'll just get people joining in, mate. That's what I'll say. I like the names. They sound good. But yeah, we'll leave it for there. And ta-ta for now, and up the Town.